Hello and welcome to Microdosing or Mushrooms, Working with Mushrooms 101. If you're here, you're probably looking at all of the PDF guides that I offer. Maybe you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So I thought that I would take the opportunity to distill a lot of it down into something that is very clear and straightforward. So I hope you're starting here when you're embarking on this journey and then using the PDF guides as a support system. A quick reference when you want to go deeper into one of the specific um, aspects of this. So we're going to start with what my method is and what I found works really well for most people. You're probably seeing a lot on the internet, and some of it can be contradictory, some of it can be confusing. And after working with a lot of people at this point, doing this full time for 4 years or almost five, I've found that there is a very custom approach that needs to be taken, but also pretty straightforward in the sense that most people will benefit from a version of what I'm going to share with you. So we're going to start with what dialing in means and the fact that there are a wide variety of strains out there. So there are over 200 different types of psychedelic strains out in the world that we're aware of, potentially many, many more, but you're probably coming in contact with only about 10 or 20% because there are definitely some fan favorites out there. Um, that means that not all strains are considered equal. So there are strains that are very potent, very strong, and some that are very smooth and have a more like light personality to them. There are strains that I believe are not appropriate for microdosing. They just have very high visuals or like a lot of body feeling to them, which isn't great for a subperceptive dose. Those are more appropriate for a bigger experience when you're ready for that. Um, I'll get into a little bit more about dosing and working with different doses with mushrooms. But for now, I just want to say that there are some specific strains that I really love for microdosing, and they're in the dial in guide. And then on top of that, dose is very important. So there's a lot on the internet and a lot of distributors or brands that just make their lives easier by saying that a microdose is considered to be 0.2 to 0.4. I have found that to not be the case for most people. Some people are incredibly sensitive, and like for me, my microdose that is truly subperceptive that I don't really feel. I just kind of feel some of the light aspects of it is 0.05 of a gram or 50 milligrams or 0.07 of a gram, which is 70 milligrams. But there are a lot of people that I work with that maybe because of their weight or past trauma or disconnection from their body or pharmaceuticals that they're on, maybe they go all the way up to 0.5, which would be half of a gram or 500 milligrams before they feel just enough for the placebo effect to kick in. So I believe that if someone has too high of a dose, so let's say that someone gets a typical microdose in the mail from someone, and that is a 0.2 or 200 milligrams, that might feel really strong for them. And then they assume that microdosing isn't for them, or they don't feel it at all, and they don't see the benefits over time, so then they give up. So what I really appreciate someone doing, or if a client is working with me, I want them to dial in. It's what I call it at least, and that is going up in small increments until you actually feel it. And then once you feel it, coming down a little bit. So to me, the perfect dial in is starting first thing in the morning, maybe on a Monday, with no food or coffee in your system, at least at first. and taking right when you wake up, maybe zero point 0.1. If you're working with me, I'm depending on a lot of factors, I'm suggesting where you should start. But most people, if they're apprehensive and never worked with the medicine before, they should start low. So maybe 0.1 of a gram or 100 milligrams. And then wait 2 to 3 hours and see, like, do I feel anything? Even if you have a slow digestion, you're still going to maybe feel something if you're going to in the 2 to 3 hour time mark. After that, go ahead and go about your day, eat your food, drink your coffee, do whatever you want. But it's a good idea to like check in with yourself and maybe wonder, like, do I feel this at all? Do I feel anything? Like, is the world a little bit brighter, a little bit more sparkly? Is my mood a little bit better? Is my focus a little bit better? Do I feel a little bit more calm? All of those signs might be a sign that you're getting close to a good subperceptive dose for you. I like to then wait a day just because your body acclimates to mushrooms very quickly. So then let's say Wednesday, you go through the process again. Depending on how close you came to feeling it, you could double it or you could go up just a little bit. So let's say that you start at 0.1, maybe on Wednesday you do 0.15 or 0.2. And you see and you check in with yourself, how does that feel? If you don't feel anything at all, that's totally fine. Don't give up, just keep going. Sometimes dial in takes a little bit longer. Then I like waiting for weekends or when you don't have a lot going on to get into the higher dose mark. So it's typically like maybe on a Saturday or Sunday, that's when you're trying 0.3 or 0.4 and really testing your limits and finding your edge. So let's say that you finally get to the point where you feel it. You could have felt it at 0.1 or 0.2. That's a good indication to stop and continue on with that dose a couple of times to see if your body acclimates to it and if it feels good to you or if it needs to be adjusted down a little bit. But let's say that you didn't feel 0.1 or 0.2 and you continue on the weekend to 0.3 or 0.4. We want you to feel it at some point, and feeling it means slightly altered, where you're like, okay, this feels like a couple of glasses of wine, or this feels like a cannabis gummy, whatever you're familiar with that is a little bit of like an altering of consciousness or of focus. We want you to get to that point and then taper back a little bit. So let's say that you finally felt it at 0.3. What I would suggest for you is that your microdose be around 0.2. It's very much in our society that we feel like we have to feel it all of the time for it to be working, and that is absolutely not the case. If you think about this approach, is microdosing is the subperceptive dose is building up your nervous system and soothing it over time. So even if you don't feel it in a very visceral way over and over again, and it's just enough for your body to sense a little bit of shift, we want that. That's perfect. And that's what you're going to be building on. And that's what's going to be soothing your nervous system over a longer period of time. What that microdosing is going to do is that it's going to train your brain and nervous system to relax and to potentially release or softly let some things that have been repressed bubble up over time. And so now we're going to get into what I like to call the processing dose. And I think that all of these doses are very important. I think that working with all of them is going to give you better results and get you more comfortable with the medicine. And so what I think when someone first starts working with the medicine is that sitting with microdosing consistently in a very devoted way for at least 3 to 4 months, sometimes 6, if you're trying to taper off of an SSRI or an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, or if you have migraines, or if you have addiction issues that you're trying to focus on, the timeline of when you should stop is different for everybody. But I think that most of the time, a 3 month span is really, really helpful, especially when you're new to this. So let's say that you've given it 3 months, then reevaluate at the end and you think, am I just getting to the root of something, or am I just now starting to see progress? Do I need to continue on with this? Or does this feel like a lot has come up for me, and now I want time to integrate it. I want to have time to actually reinforce some of these habits and neural pathways that I've created. And I need to give myself a break and then come back to it intuitively as needed. Checking in with yourself, or if you're working with me or another coach, to understand what's right for you. So when it comes to dose, we're trying to find out what dose is right for you. And then we want to find out protocol. So there are a lot of protocols out on the internet. In my humble opinion, a lot of them are a little bit too intense. Most of the ones that are telling you to do 0.2 or 0.4 5 days a week with just a couple days off, that's typically a good way to develop a tolerance and to let too much come up too soon. And so, like, let's say you have migraines or you're suffering from an addiction that you're trying to kick. If that's the case and you're working with someone that can support you with that, it might be appropriate for you to be microdosing that often. But majority of the time, I believe that we rob ourselves of the afterglow, which is what I like to call the day after microdosing. So let's say on your microdosing day, you let a little bit of emotion process. Maybe you watched something on the internet and it made you cry, or you had a difficult conversation with a loved one and you were able to get something off of your chest, or you saw something about yourself in your life and you need time to wrap your head around it. The afterglow, or the day after, is a really nice time to integrate that, or to understand that, or to reinforce whatever new thought or perspective came up. Typically, the day after is a very nice feeling. It's you're feeling a little bit lighter and you're feeling a little bit more present in your life. So don't like force your way into getting results too fast or think that you have to do it perfectly. What we're trying to do is wrap this around your life and allow it to support you and not derail your life, or make you feel like you can't microdose because you're too busy. All of the different doses matter. So back to dose and protocol. What is going to be important for you is knowing your subperceptive dose, which is truly not really, you're not really feeling it. And what I suggest for most people is my method, which is the 3-3-3, which is 3 days out of every week, 3 weeks out of every month for at least 3 months. So that might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Really getting into a flow with it. And I love having powder and a scale, especially for dial in, so you can go up in small increments, but also so that you're in control of your dose. So let's say if you get 0.2 capsules, you're kind of stuck with it unless you break them open and pour them out. Versus if you have powder and you have a very busy day and you're worried about feeling your medicine, you can go purposefully much, much lower, but stay consistent with your practice of keeping the medicine in your system working in the background. And then let's say that you have a day off and you want to go deeper into thought, or you want to try meditation or working out or something on it, then you have the ability to go up in your dose. Depending on what's right for you and how comfortable you feel with it, giving yourself the ability to use a scale. And I'm going to obviously be linking a scale that I suggest. It's a gem scale that registers below a gram, and making sure that you test the scale and make sure that it's accurate. A lot of times it'll come with a little weight to make sure that the scale is registering correctly. And then depending on how you like to take your medicine, once you're dialed in, you don't have to do no coffee and no food. The only reason why I suggest that is because a lot of times when people are very new to the medicine, they might drink it with coffee and then feel jittery because sometimes the medicine gives them a lot of energy, and they assume that it's the mushrooms when it's in all actuality the caffeine. And so I want you to know what the medicine feels like by itself and then being able to support yourself with other things. So let's say when you were dialing in, it made you very, very sleepy. Like it put you down, regulated you into a parasympathetic state. If that's the case, you might want to take it either very first thing in the morning, and after a few times of it making you sleepy, you can incorporate coffee with it. Or if it makes you so incredibly sleepy at a very low dose, that might mean that your body's been revving for way too long and it's been in fight or flight too long, and the mushrooms are finally helping you get into a parasympathetic state. Then you might need to turn it into a nightcap protocol, which I would suggest testing on a weekend, which means taking it at night before bed. But if it does give you a lot of energy, like it does for most people, then taking it first thing in the morning and understanding then how you can support yourself. If at any point you feel it a little bit more than normal, even though you're taking the normal dose, which does happen, your digestion plays a role in how much you feel it, your sleep, your stress, all of that can affect how much you feel it. Not to mention that this isn't like a scientifically made in a lab substance. This is an organic substance that the psilocybin can change in each batch that is grown, even though it's the same genetics and the same strain all of the time. If you ever feel like it's a little bit too much, then eating food should knock it out of your system. Moving your body, like going on a walk or doing jumping jacks, or sometimes just laying down and letting yourself let the medicine pass, is typically a good way of working with it. But that's why it's really important that you understand your doses so you don't have little surprises like that. So maybe at this point, you've understood what your subreceptive dose is, which is fantastic. That's what you want to be working with most of the time. But every now and again, so maybe like once a month, maybe twice a month, you do want to actually process. So a subperceptive dose is allowing you to soften and to open, that allows things to bubble up, which is a very grounded and calming situation. And then most of the time, we also need support with activation, because a lot of times we repress any grief or rage because we don't know how to process it. Others around us don't know how to hold it. We just don't give our emotions very much space in our society. So them being stuck or us feeling like we're not allowed to process them makes it really hard to get that stuff off of our chest and out of our system, which, as you know, like dis-ease turns into disease. Like that's where cancer comes from. That's where pain comes from. That's where anxiety and depression comes from. And so you do want to give yourself the opportunity to process, which means carving out an hour or two, taking a dose that you actually feel. So maybe that's double your normal microdose. And maybe you do it with the lemon tech method, which you also have a guide for. And that allows you to actually strategically plan when you're giving yourself the opportunity to have this experience. So that means if you have kids and a partner, you ask them to leave the house for 2 to 3 hours, or you do this on a day when your kids are at school, or you plan when you're going to be able to take that time for yourself. And utilizing the lemon tech method instead of just ingesting the powder means that it's going to go into your bloodstream very quickly. So you know that it's going to go in almost instantly, maybe like anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes it should take for you to feel it. And then it leaves your system much more quickly because we're not waiting on your digestion to process this medicine. So that's another point is maybe even your microdoses, you can decide how you want to take them. So for instance, if you are doing your normal microdose and you want your digestion to slowly digest it over the day, kind of like a slow release pharmaceutical, you're going to put it in tea or juice or yogurt or like whatever. You can just pop it in your mouth. Whatever it is, you're actually putting the fruiting body, the capsule or the powder in your stomach. That is going to make sure, especially if it's in a capsule, that is going to make sure that it takes much longer to digest. That means that you might feel it way later in the day or for a longer time throughout the day. And for a lot of people, they appreciate that. That's what they want. Others, if you know that you have a specific amount of time and you want to use it for a workout, you want to use it for meditation, you want to use it for a walk, you want to use it for an emotional processing experience, then you do want to use the lemon tech method because it's acting as if it's your stomach acid and it's allowing it to go into your bloodstream much more quickly. And so this might feel like a lot of information, but it's ways in which you can really work with the medicine to fit into your lifestyle, like I was saying. The other thing that I would like everyone to take into consideration is that eventually, if there is something that is consistently coming up, like maybe a core wound or something that feels like you might need something a little bit heavier to process, maybe a bigger experience, like a light tea experience, laying down in your bed with an eye mask on, is going to be appropriate eventually. So I think that most people really benefit from working with mushrooms when they learn to trust the medicine over a longer period of time in a microdosing capacity. They every now and again bring in slightly higher doses for processing to let some of this emotion come up, whether it be grief or rage or just like shaking sometimes can take place. This is like the somatic aspect of it. Then eventually having like a slightly larger experience, not a dose that's appropriate for a facilitator to be present, but a dose that is appropriate for you to maybe sit with the medicine by yourself. You can bet on 4 to 6 hours for that type of experience, but I believe that working up to that, to where you trust yourself, you trust the medicine, you've understood how to work with it, and you actually have some insight onto what your intention is in working with the medicine. So if you give yourself the time to do this entire process, yes, it takes longer, but you will see a profound impact and longer lasting change if you devote your time and energy to doing this in a different way, or a more devoted way, if you will. Once you've gone through that entire experience, whether that's 3 months for you or 6 months for you, then you can bring the medicine back in intuitively. This is now an amazing tool in your toolkit, and you know that maybe you want to bring it in because of creativity or something happened in your life and you want to have some support processing grief, or you want to bring it in to have a microdose assisted conversation with your partner so both of you soften to what needs to be understood about each other. All of these are beautiful ways to utilize the medicine once you feel like you have had a handle on it, once you feel in communion with the medicine and you understand what everyone's different doses is and how to support yourself through what comes up. So this comes to one of the last things that I want to talk about, which is taking the medicine is fantastic. If that's all you do and you do a very light dose for as long as you want, fantastic. But if you want to see real change and longer lasting change, then it's a really important formula that means that there are intellectual and communication type elements. So that means maybe you're working with a coach or a therapist or an integration group or your partner or a friend, whatever it is, like talking about what you're witnessing, what you're noticing, what you're remembering. A lot of memories and repressed things might come up, and addressing them now is going to be really important to process them and get them out of your system. So the emotional side of things, the intellectual side of things, really giving yourself the space. Also, journaling is very important. And then the body side of things, that's like a very key factor that's missing in our healing system, in our society. We're okay in talking and intellectualizing our trauma and our issues. We're okay to vent with our therapist, but we often don't let our bodies process in the way that our bodies want. And most people can't handle watching us process in the way that is natural. So if you come unhinged, if you process rage, if you sob, if you shake a lot, all of these are ways that your body wants to move and process things out of its system. And we typically need to do that by ourselves. We typically need to give ourselves permission to maybe have a sacred rage ceremony where we dance around and scream and punch a pillow, screaming into a pillow. All of that is very helpful. Or like letting ourselves like sob uncontrollably, letting ourselves dance around, letting ourselves stretch. A lot of, especially men, will benefit from heavy lifting or a big workout while they have the medicine in their system to really process some intense energy that maybe their body has been storing. All of these things are really, really helpful. Walks, stretching, breath work, all of it is very helpful when working with the medicine to get stuff up and out of your system. And then on top of that, the third aspect, I like to say body, mind, and soul. The soul aspect is always, they have found the indication of a society or of a person that is happier and more adjusted and more grounded. And it could be a version of spirituality, it could be ritual, it could be communing with nature, whatever your perfect secret sauce is, whatever feels right to you, whether it be reading or going to some type of community type gathering, spending alone time in nature, reading a specific book that gives you hope, that expands your mind, that opens your heart. When you work on having all three of these things supporting yourself when you're working with the medicine, you will see an incredible shift in your life. So that's my secret sauce. That's my formula that I share with everyone. It's one thing to just take the medicine and get that support from your nervous system, but it's another thing to completely rewire your brain and to allow new narratives to come in, to see new perspectives, new angles, to have hard conversations with your loved ones, to take chance and risk and try something new. Art therapy is another really beautiful thing that people really benefit from when working with this medicine as well. There are guides for all of these things in this bundle, but I hope that it makes sense. I know this is a lot of information, but I've found that when people are thoughtful about using aspects of what I just shared to like bring in and benefit from, they actually try them for a little while and understand what works for them and what doesn't, and then stick with it, that they see a lot more change and benefit. So I hope this was helpful. Always reach out to me with questions. Stay consistent, and good luck.